Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. On the sort of mid-season updates, a couple of shelves at a time, I thought I'd have another go today as I've got a lot to water. I think that statement just goes as read now, doesn't it? I'm always going to have a lot to water till this heat goes. Long-term weather forecast is not funny. It sounds like there might be some storms around which will give us a bit of rain and cool it down a little bit for the weekend, which will be nice for the garden party. But then towards next weekend it's going to get hot again. So there's just no end to it at the moment. It's just going to go on. So you've got to live and lump it and just get on with it, basically. Anyway, as a consequence, I do have a lot to water today. Started up here, but we've done that shelf. I did that lot yesterday and didn't film it, so I'll have to do those another time. And I'm sort of starting over here now. Now I probably won't be able to film all of that because there's other things to water as well. I must do my little ones, but we've already filmed those, so I'm getting through them slowly but surely. But I'll film an amount out of this lot today. Probably won't finish all of them because it slows me down, and I'd like to get it done before all the fans kick off and it gets too warm in here, so I'll see how I get on. Well, this is Dendrobium wedding bells. I've just literally taken the last bloom off. So this was in bloom a very, very long time. And although it's classed as a nobile type, it doesn't grow and perform like a normal nobile. For a start, it's a summer bloomer rather than late winter, early spring. So for a start, there aren't any buds towards the end of the winter. And as the spring comes, they come later. And so do the new growths. New growths on this one tend to push out sort of like now, and quite honestly I could do with some. There's not much sign of activity down at the base, but now that it's finished blooming it probably will start the vegetative growth. It'll do better without the ants. And it's got a good root system. I mean, it has pushed out a lot of new roots since the early spring. That part does seem to perform like other dendrobiums, new roots in the spring, but yeah, the new growths come late, and so do the blooms. So an unusual nobile type, but it's doing okay. I mean, it's growing into a bigger, stronger plant each year, so that's good. But it could definitely do with some new growths. Well, this is my Catatanti in full flood at the moment. There's only a few more buds left to open, and you've got to have a bit of luck sometimes. As I went to pick this plant up, it fell, and I caught it there and there. So I didn't damage the spike and I didn't drop it, but it was dust dry. Absolutely no weight in that pot whatsoever. And with the spike hanging this way and most of the plant over this side of the pot, I can't leave it like that. So as much as I object to staking spikes, I have no choice, or this is going to keep falling over. It was okay up to the point the blooms opened, but the sheer weight of that spike added to the weight of the plant, it now will not stand up on its own. Now I could put it in a heavier clay pot, but I don't think I've got any that big. Anyway, this plant's doing okay. It's actually starting a new growth. I don't remember it doing that before. I'm sure the new growth followed on after the blooms on this one, but anyway, it's getting a new growth going. Hasn't too long been in that pot, so it can probably, in fact I'll have to move it, won't I? All that growth's going to be right out the pot. Yeah, okay, we'll wait for a bit, wait till it gets going, and then we'll move the whole plant back a bit, perhaps take an old bulb off. But yeah, to counterbalance the plant over one side of the pot, the spike's now hanging out in the other direction, so that should that should sort out the problem. But it's doing okay, this plant. Some of the older leaves are a little spotted. Difficult to avoid that on a lot of the Oncidium types. It is a form of bacterial infection. You know, its typical cause, people say, oh, well, you've left drops of water on the leaves. Well, bearing in mind, I don't get my plants wet. I don't believe that's the cause. I believe it is just not a trait. It's a symptom of them not being in perfect conditions, I suspect, more than anything. It's not bug damage, and it's on the older leaves. Yeah, the leaves on the latest one look pretty clean. So anyway, it happens on some, and on some it's really bad, and on other Oncidiums you get none. So it's difficult to say what causes it, but it is a form of bacterial infection. And and a lot of people say you only get it when you've had bug damage and they've bitten little holes which then become infected. Well, do you see the bugs? Because I flipping don't. So I've got no answer to that. It just seems to be a trait of some of the Oncidium types and their intergenerics. So I don't worry about it that much. It's on older leaves. They're going to drop off eventually anyway. But I hope they don't drop off too soon, because at the moment I've only got one leaved bulb plus the latest growth that's in bloom. So I don't want to lose any leaves just yet, although this one is starting to yellow. Oh well, new growth coming, that'll help. Well, this Dendrobium came out of the big box, and quite honestly it came out, to all intents and purposes, dead. But it isn't dead. It's Jarac Spin Blue crossed with Wendy Lim Chang. Weird name. But it had no life on it, no active roots and no green whatsoever, no leaves and some gone canes basically. But I thought I'd pot it up and see what happens. Well, there are a couple of new growths that might push on. That Kiki's not going to make it. That one, that growth around there doesn't look happy, but it did try. But again, that's a Kiki. But we do have some new growths near the base. They're not good, and this plant still may not make it. It's not happy, far from it. But it's just about hanging on, that's all I can say. Now, this is the better of my two Sherry babies, and it's still not brilliant, but I don't have a lot of luck with these, and I really haven't worked out why. But my only theory is that a long time ago, when I bought the original plant, I just got a weak one. I just got one that doesn't grow as well. And of course, over the years, it's been split, it's been divided, older parts have been thrown out, but it still comes from that original one plant, because I've only ever bought one. So this is a result. And I think this can go on the list of looking out for a really good new one. You know, a nice decent sized plant, flipping good root system, nice healthy leaves. So if I see one, even though it's a plant I've got, I'll get a new one, if you see what I mean. Because obviously the crosses get done again, they get repeated, or you get new mericlones produced. You know, so I just think I got one that just doesn't grow very well. Anyway, this is the better of the two. It's got a nice new growth coming up here, another one here, and it's currently got a spike on the previous growth. I think it bloomed, yeah, it bloomed on that one as well. So this particular one isn't doing too bad. The two yellowing leaves are on the oldest bulb. That's a natural progression. And again, a few spots, but not too bad. I've seen a lot worse than that. Anyway, that's the better of the two. Wait till you see the other one. Now, those of you that have been following my channel for some time will remember, not last year, the year before, my Dendrobium Harvey Annan that was in bloom virtually for the whole of the year and was a stunning plant. Well, it isn't now. During last year, it just started to go downhill, and I've never found out why, and I still don't know. But basically, I took it off its mount because I had just had a feeling the moss had broken down. I'd had the plant a long time on the same mount, so that is a theory. Could have been the wood it was on or the moss, so it had to be worth taking it off as a try and putting it in some nice fresh media. Well, since then it hasn't done much. It's sulking. But I've still got some green leaves up here. Not a lot. It's had a little burst of flowers earlier this year, had a few spikes, and now it's doing absolutely nothing. There's no sign of any new spikes, and there's no sign of any new growths, and there's no sign of what I would call active roots. So it's just sitting there now. So it's either dying or it's sulking before it dies, but it's not doing well at all. Not doing well at all. I did actually get a couple of Kikis off it, but I did actually promise them to somebody else, so I'll have to work on that. But no, that plant's just not doing well. I haven't got a clue. Just went over not dramatically, not all of a sudden, it just went downhill slowly but surely. I put it down to either the wood and or the old moss. But since giving it a fresh start, it doesn't seem to want to start. It just seems to want to sit there looking ugly. It's a shame. I mean, that was one of my favourite Dendrobiums, Mr. Frilly. You know, Frilly lip, yes, there's quite a few like that, but frilly sepals as well. Petals, sorry, petals. So, you know, all three, the set, nice and frilly, and a lovely golden yellow too. So I don't want to lose it. If I lose it, it'll have to be replaced. I can't be without that one. I really like it. This is my Encyclia prismatocarpa, a non-bloomer, and that's for quite a few years. Was on a mount a long time ago. It didn't seem to hydrate very well on there, so it went in a holy clay pot and it seemed to perk up a bit. But unfortunately it was also in the, because it's a non-bloomer, it went in the giveaway drawer, and it ended up not being given away because it wouldn't go in the box. So it came out of the holy clay pot for transport purposes, so it's now in a plastic pot. It's putting up a stonking new growth here, that's good, but only one. This has always had 2 leads on it, and the other one should have been here. And I don't see any signs of a new growth on that one this time, so I may only have one. But it just won't bloom. It produces sheaths every single time it gets a sheath, but so far no blooms. And it's a shame. The reason I got that, if you want to Google that one and have a look at the blooms, they are gorgeous, as Encyclias go. It's probably one of the best. Fragrant too, but I've never seen them. Well, not in this grow room anyway. So come on. Perhaps this latest growth may perform. We'll see. And the only reason you didn't go under the hedge was because of your blooms. And having decided it's got to be worth trying because of the blooms, I think it listened to the threat. It is now trying quite hard. That's a hell of a new growth on there. Only the one, but I took all of the old part of that plant off. And basically decided I'm going to start at the front end, see if I can get a new growth and get some new roots. Well, I've got some good roots now, and I've got a hell of a new growth. Now it's called formidable or formidable, because I think it was a French cross originally, so it ought to be pronounced that way. And it's a cross between Formosum and the magnificent infundibulum. Now we have a cross here that's got infundibulum in it. The infundibulum part is the pure white, the shape, and some colour in the lip. If you look at the size of that plant, the blooms on this are half as big again. It's the nearest thing to a large white cattleya you'll probably ever see on a dendrobium. In fact, if I can be bothered, I'll put a pop-up, because it has bloomed for me, but it was a hell of a long time ago. But I have a friend who's got a massive dendrobium collection. He's got this cross, and I think it was at the last meeting he actually brought it in flower, and I think he had 3 or 4 canes, all with blooms on the top, with 3 or 4 blooms on the top of each cane. It sort of stole the show. Anyway, coming on at long last. Now this one here is an Alisara, and I always think of it as this one's twin sister. Yeah, they both came from the same place, they both had fusarium, and they've both taken a hell of a long time to recover. And this one's recovered reasonably well and has managed to get to bloom again. This one hasn't got that far yet, but it did produce 2 new growths that seemed to grow clean, not too bad, pushed up to a good size, and produced roots that haven't completely died back. And now it's got 2 new growths coming at the base. So I think I can class it as rescued, but boy has that taken a long time. Now that's Alisara Sunday Best Pink Skirt, and worth hanging on to. I don't think I've ever seen that one. That other one that I've just shown you, that's Evening Colours, the Gloaming, and this one I have never seen anywhere else. Now, it could be that they've got made up names and they're not registered, but this one certainly got registered because it was awarded. But they really don't turn up. I've never seen them. That actually was an American Orchid Society award, so they're obviously around in the States, or have been in the past perhaps. Just might be a cross that you know, was done, won an award, and nobody's ever repeated it. So, you know, they get sold, they get lost, you know. So anyway, this one's coming on. It's taken a long time, as long as the other one. This is its 3rd year from, you know, starting the rescue process. But at least we got some growths. Oh, goody. Now this is a struggler, and the friend I was just talking about with the large Dendrobium collection, he had this one with a very poor quality, but with a spike on that he brought. I think he put it in the Malvern show. It's a bit of a sauce when it wasn't a very good plant. I had a chat to him about it, and I said, I've got that one, but it just doesn't seem to grow very well. I said, yeah. He said, no, nor does mine. And I know a couple of other people that got this as absolutely stonking beautiful plants, and they just go downhill. And he said, I don't know anyone that's got a good one. It's Gilded Tower Mystic Maze, and it has lovely Brassia type blooms on it. It's a gorgeous bloom, but the older bulbs turn almost black, so it has got a trait in it that's unusual. I mean, they're solid, these are not weak, but this has not got a very good root system. Its last growth was quite poor, but at least it produced one, and it's having a go at producing one new growth and possibly two. And if those new growths, actually there are signs of roots at the base of that one. I was just going to say, if that can now push out some roots now, then maybe the next two growths will push on and get up to full blooming size. It hasn't bloomed for ages now. It's got a root system, and there are root tips. It's branching on some of the, you know, roots near the top of the pot, you know. So it's got some roots growing in there, but it's almost as though it exhausts itself, where it tries to grow so big, and without an absolutely brilliant root system to support it, it just can't. There's just something not quite right with this thing. So if you've got a really good one of this, well done, because I know several people that haven't. But anyway, at least it's trying. It's pushing up a couple of new growths. Let's see if they'll push on and get to blooming size. Lovely blooms. It's worth, you know, it's not in the way. It lives on one of the shelves out of the way, so I can put up with it and wait for it to do something. Well, this is what's left of what was a massive Dendrobium spring Dreama pollen, which I split and gave away the main plant. I don't very often do that, but I thought I'll take a piece off and see if we can get it going. I mean, it's, the new growth is producing some new roots now, so it's starting to get going. It's probably a year or two off being a good sized plant again, but it's on its way. And the logic behind giving away the main plant was I do actually have another plant coming on here. It's actually in bloom at the moment, a bit out of season, and a mealybug, gotcha. There's another one down in there. Well, that needs a spray. So they get right down in the crown of a growth, and that will take out the growing tip, little tykes. But this is an old cane. This was the original Kiki, I think, from Rachel, or maybe this one was, and that was the next growth. But this new growth pushed on nicely. I'm waiting for another one to start now on this, probably when the blooms finish. It's probably holding up the works here. So I've got spring Dreama pollen. It's still in the collection, but nothing like what it was. I've decided to sort of start again and rejuvenate plants from scratch and see where we go with that. Well, this is what's left of my Dendrobium Primadonna. Again, a plant that's performed well over the years but was getting tired. Quite a lot of older canes, and it just needed a break. So basically I split it. Somebody else has got a rather large half of this one. I kept this bit on the grounds that I wanted to rejuvenate a new plant, which it seems to be doing okay at the moment. We've got a nice strong new growth here. Another one coming from underground somewhere, another one here, and I've just noticed this one today. I don't think that one was there last time, and it looks like it's going to push another one out here. Quite a lot of root activity, so this one's going to push on well, and I might have to treat this a little bit different, because normally with my Noblies I don't stop watering them or do anything daft like that. They get the brightest light I can give them in the winter, and I do stop feeding them, and I do reduce the water down, but I don't stop watering them. I do actually give them a trickle now and again. Now this one might have to be treated differently. It depends how fast those growths push on. But if I get to the point where I ought to be starting the winter rest for this one, and these canes are still growing and haven't had reached their terminal leaf, then I'll carry on watering it this time round. It may mean it'll have less blooms, it may mean it doesn't have any, or it has them later in the season. And it will knock it out of season slightly, but it'll get back in next year. But I don't want to stunt those growths. If they're still pushing on, then I will still carry on watering them through the winter. And we'll see how large I can get them. But as I said, there's 4 definites and what looks like a 5th coming on, which, given the number of canes I've got, that's not bad going to get that many canes. I think if I show Primadonna to Spring Dreama Pollen, it might get the idea of what it's supposed to be doing, because that's what it should be doing. Oh, I've got an old bloom there, sitting there wasting away. It hasn't long been out of bloom, actually. Anyway, that one's coming on nicely. Well pleased with the progress on that. Pushing on nicely. That's a good set of new growths at the base of that. Lovely. Well, this is the Brassia Chieftain Ludlows that was in bloom earlier this year. Lovely big long spike, and it's sulking, and it was expected, because basically it was on a mount and virtually all the root system was aerial, and I just couldn't hydrate it. You can see the bulb did start to dehydrate. I just couldn't get enough water into it, basically. It's having a little sulk on the grounds that aerial roots suddenly plunged into media, usually just stall. But at some point it is going to produce a new growth, and at that point it'll grow a new root system. There's a rumour it might actually manage to get a new growth out there. But I'm expecting new growth here somewhere. Growth or growths, depends on how it reacts. But is it worth taking these bracts off to see if I can encourage those new growths? That can happen. They're there for a reason. They protect the base of the bulb, and where the new roots could, or new growths can come from. So it gives them some protection. But also it can sort of slow things down because the light's not getting in there. So although it's a little bit artificial, sometimes just easing these away from the bulb just kick-starts them, just starts them going. God, they're strong. I don't see any sign of anything there. I mean, that's the base of the old flower spike, so there won't be a new growth coming out there, I doubt. It'll be the other side. But anyway, that can kickstart. All right, just knock that one over. Clumsy. Not too much bark fell out. Good. Right, let's have a tidy up. Well, this is my Epidendrum Comet Valley Orange Star. I actually remembered it this time, so it's got no flipping tag on it. It's now finished, basically. In fact, that last spike can come off. There's no point in leaving that there. Snip that off. And obviously now I need to grow on some new canes ready for blooming. The older canes will hold their leaves for some considerable time, so they really do help feed the plant. They're not worth taking off as long as they're leaved. But down in here we do have, yeah, there are new canes coming. There's a nice one coming up the middle here. Yeah, there's another one there, another one here, another one there. It's got at least 4 new canes coming, and it will probably carry on producing new canes for a while now. And they'll grow on, they'll slow down in the winter, and then they'll pick up again, and they should all bloom again next year. All of these that bloomed were my canes. I bought it in bloom the year before at Malvern, and then those canes finished blooming. They didn't last long, actually. And then for the rest of that season, throughout the winter and then into this spring, it grew all these canes, and they all bloomed nicely. So I see no reason why the next set of canes won't bloom again next year. So that's just finished blooming. I think that's been in bloom about 5 months. Absolute star. Well worth having. It's a radicans type, and they do come in many colours, right from quite deep reds through the oranges into the yellows. I think there are even some pink ones, but I like the yellows, oranges and reds. They just look nice for me anyway. And this one's bonus is that although it's a lovely orange, it has got a little splash of yellow in the centre. So anyway, now's the time to grow it on. Right, that's that shelf done. I'm going to leave it at that for the day, because the filming slows me down, and I've still got quite a lot to water, and I've got about an hour left before all the fans kick on and everything, so I want to crack on with the watering, and I think that will probably be more than enough for a video. Probably end up being too long, but that's how I end up. I clear the decks. That one got watered yesterday. That's the Brassia Make. So we filmed that, that's done, that's why it's staying where it is, because it got watered yesterday. So I take all my plants off, water them one at a time, kick them around the floor, knock them over, they bump into each other, and then when I've finished I arrange them back on the shelf. Most of the time they go back in the same place, but things like the Epidendrums finish blooming now, so that doesn't need to go towards the front to look at the blooms anymore. That can now go right up against the glass and get the bright light that it needs. You know, or brighter light than that it needs. So I do rearrange as I go, but anything that's in bloom stays near the front of the shelf where we can see it. So get that one tidied up, and that'll do with the filming for this one. See you next time.